I'm Francesca Maxime.
And I'm Matt McClure, and this is Currents.
If you think your love life doesn't have a prayer, we've got the place for you.
Anybody can come and feel like I'm going to have a good time.
In a city full of museums, here's one where the collection isn't just priceless, it's timeless.
The Bible is this one book that's influenced our culture and our art more than any other book in the history of Western civilization.
And this flick gets 2 thumbs up from the Pope. Good evening. Well, New York City is known as one of the best cities in the world for single people like you and me. If you're unattached, this is pretty much the place to be. There's so much to do.
I know, that's right. But, if you're single and ready to mingle, looking for that special someone, where do you look? Well, you got bars, you've got clubs. How about church?
Well, perhaps, a growing number of people are finding that may be the best place to meet your soulmate. Our Natalia Ortiz visited a gathering last weekend that looked to provide some direction.
It's a topic many love to talk about, and New York City has been its backdrop in tons of TV shows and movies. It's got to do with the trials and tribulations of the single life. 60% of adults in American cities are single, according to Catholic Thrive, and many hang out in bars just like this one in search for that special someone. But this past weekend, a Catholic organization offered another place to meet and mingle with singles. The New Yorker Hotel hosted Catholic Thrive, a weekend-long event targeting young, single Catholics in the Big Apple. The gathering offers an alternative to the bars and clubs where singles usually hang out.
It's not just for the hardcore Catholics who do Eucharistic adoration and know the catechism. This is a conference for anybody who feels even the slightest openness to or interest toward Catholicism. It's a conference where anybody can come and feel like I'm going to have a good time, I'm going to be inspired, I'm going to have some good spiritual experiences, and I'm going to meet some fun people and get to dance too. Fun was definitely had. How else would our own Lino Rulli have had anything to do with it?
All right, Lino, so you're here to host a dating game. So you do so much. You work for us, you do serious radio, now you're doing a dating game. What is up with this?
Well, I'm not going to meet girls on TV or radio, so I thought the best way to meet girls is to actually just show up where they are. And some states call it stalking. Here it's just called hosting.
And as for the players, I tracked down the coveted bachelor.
Give us your 10-second elevator pitch as to why you'd be an ideal man for a Catholic woman.
Well, I'm not exactly sure how to answer that. The reason why I would say I'm a good candidate here is that, I am the co-founder of a Catholic men's organization called the King's Men, which has been a tremendous blessing in my life over the past 3 or 4 years that has really helped form me as a great Catholic man of faith and virtue. And, I'm ready to be married. I'm ready.
But can you cook? That's what we really want to know.
Mary Beth Bonacci was one of the speakers during the event. She pointed out the quirks of the single life.
There's a party every night. This is awesome. The second stage is, a lot of these parties are weddings. I seem to be invited to a lot of weddings. And then the third stage is, where'd everybody go? Hey.
Many, including Anna Morris, say singles today are faced with new dynamics that weren't present in prior generations.
Men don't seem to be taking the initiative as much as they used to, and it seems like in order for a guy to ask me out, I have to really kind of prompt them.
To believe that if a guy acts like a total jerk, that means he likes you. Hey Connor, I hadn't heard from you, and how stupid is it that a gal's got to wait for a guy's call anyway?
Damien Wargo tells us the ugly truth. The kind even books and movies have been based on.
It could be the guy's just not that interested. If a guy doesn't have the ability to ask out a woman that he's interested in, is that really the type of man that you want to be with?
And Angeline pointed out other challenges singles encounter in 2009.
I just think our culture doesn't, we don't promote family life. We promote, independence, living on your own, lots of technology so you don't have to talk to anyone. And I think it's very serious. It's very serious. We're all hurting, and we need to connect physically.
Once you get connected and play in your own dating game, Bonacci suggests singles search for what she says is the most important of all.
In any setting, the first thing has to be, this person is image and likeness of God. This person is created by God. This person has dignity. This person has value. How do I want to learn about that.
That is our Natalia Ortiz reporting from Catholic Thrive.
Well, that one girl, I think, had a point when she was talking about technology, you know.
Yeah.
As you know, I'm big on technology. Just did an all-technology show a few days ago. And I'm a big proponent of it and how it can help, connect people and things like that.
Yeah.
But it does cut down on FaceTime quite a bit.
That's why there's Facebook. No, I'm just kidding. I mean,
right.
Honestly,
FaceTime, Facebook.
Now, the thing is, I think about dating, I mean, this is a nice thing that people can do and they can meet people of faith because it's a mess out there. I mean, I know for sure it sure can be.
Poor Francesca.
No, all right, enough of that. I just mean it's hard, that's all. Oy, all right, can we get to the next segment?
Okay, we'll go. Well, stay tuned, folks, when Currents returns, heading back to school and keeping healthy. Those stories and the rest of the day's headlines all coming up straight ahead.
And a doctor of the church and a hit on the silver screen.
Welcome back to Currents. I'm Matt McClure.
And I'm Francesca Maxime. Coming up a little bit later, you can tour the Bible right here in New York.
Oh, well, we'll be looking forward to it.
Yeah,
First, let's have a look at the day's headlines. Well, on Tuesday, it was back to school in the Brooklyn Diocese. On the minds of administrators and students, the H1N1 virus, or swine flu. St. Francis Prep in Fresh Meadows closed for several days back in the spring because of an outbreak. It's among the schools taking precautions, including the installation of hand sanitizing stations. As President Obama addresses the nation on health care tonight, pro-life advocates are preparing a vigil in Washington for this coming Sunday. The 27-hour vigil will take place on the west lawn of the Capitol building. Pro-lifers will pray that no taxpayer money be used to pay for abortions. The vigil will get underway at 7 p.m. Sunday and last through 10 p.m. the following day. Well, a man who is very familiar with Washington life, former House Speaker Newt Gingrich, discussed his recent conversion to Catholicism with the National Catholic Register. Gingrich says he began attending Mass in Washington to hear his wife sing in the choir. He says Pope Benedict's appearance last year at the National Shrine convinced him to convert.
The story of one of the doctors of the church is being told in a new television biopic. As we hear from Rome Reports, the Pope gives it 2 thumbs up.
St. Augustine is undoubtedly one of the greatest figures in the history of Christianity. And more than 1,600 years after his death, a new film about his life is hitting the silver screen. It's a miniseries titled Augustine, The Decline of the Roman Empire. It's an international effort produced by 3 production companies from Poland, Italy, and Germany. The film also tells how his mother, St. Monica, influenced Augustine's conversion to Catholicism.
Santa Monica had a very clear vision of what Augustine could do in his life. She was certain. I think this was the light she had and why she left such a mark in history.
Monica Guerritore plays St. Monica in the film. She says playing such a big role was important to her on a deep level.
I didn't approach this role or others like Joan of Arc as a Catholic, but more as a human being curious about these larger-than-life figures that changed the course of history and took one path instead of another.
The Pope, who admires St. Augustine, got a private screening of the series.
In un contesto per noi molto distante si realizza tutta la realtà della vita umana con tutti I problemi, le tristezze, gli insuccessi e il fatto alla fine che la verità è più forte e trova l'uomo.
Benedict XVI had the opportunity to meet Monica Guerritore and the rest of the film's actors afterward, and he thanked them for their hard work in producing the film.
The movie of St. Augustine's life is part of a series that chronicles the fall of the Roman Empire through the eyes of historical figures. Well, over in Finland, it hasn't happened in almost 500 years. The country, which forms a single Catholic diocese, has its first native-born bishop since the Protestant Reformation. He takes the place of his Polish-born predecessor. And finally, swine flu prevention takes many forms. In some dioceses, it means no sign of peace and no communion wine. But some congregations in the Church of Sweden are taking a bit of a different approach. They're serving a stronger, more fortified kind of wine. Church authorities hope the wine will provide greater protection against the spread of swine flu. Swine and wine.
That's right. They get creative. Well, stay tuned. We have much more currents coming up straight ahead.
Coming up, art that isn't just for art's sake.
Art was done on commission, largely, and it was done for a very specific purpose. A lot of the art was done for the church.
The Met, MoMA, the Guggenheim, even the Brooklyn Museum right here. There are plenty of places to visit in New York if you want to see some fine art.
Definitely no shortage. But how about a museum that focuses exclusively on biblical art? Well, it might be something you think you have to travel to the Vatican to see, but it turns out art from the Bible is just a subway ride away.
It is. I had a chance to visit the Museum of Biblical Art in Midtown Manhattan and spoke with the museum's executive director, Dr. Ina Heller. So what is the museum's real purpose and why was it even created?
The purpose of the museum is really very simple. It's to show that the Bible is this one book that's influenced our culture and our art more than any other book in the history of Western civilization.
So how was the art used? Was it used for propaganda? Was it used for education?
Well, see, our modern concept of art for art's sake is what it is. It's a modern concept. It didn't exist until, or before I should say, it didn't exist before the 18th century. And so prior to that date, art was done on commission, largely, and it was done for a very specific purpose. A lot of the art done, and we're talking about the Western tradition, of course, a lot of the art was done for the church. The church was the single largest patron of the arts up until the Enlightenment. And so a lot of art was ritual art. It was meant to be held in a church, in a chapel, be it a private chapel or a public chapel, but it was an object of worship.
But it isn't just for Catholics. I mean, you'll see all kinds of art here, right? For different religions?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, biblical art, the way we define it, is a very broad concept. And of course, it includes art that was specifically done for the church, and that includes the Orthodox, the Catholic, the Protestant, really, and all the other later traditions. But it also includes a lot of art that wasn't necessarily done in the service of the church, but it's art that really relates back to the text of the Bible, relates back to the traditions that have evolved from that one book, both Jewish and Christian. So it's a very large umbrella, and we try to show that diversity.
So then what would be the difference perhaps between religious art and biblical art?
I would say the main distinction between religious art and biblical art is that religious art is art that pertains to a religious ritual, and it is in the service of the church. Biblical art is art, it's a more expansive notion, and it's art that relates to the Bible, but it can be done out of your own private impulse as an artist. It can be art that expresses a different type of relationship with the Bible. It's not necessarily approval or enhancement. It can be critical. It can be reflective of a struggle that people sometimes have with the faith they grew up in or the faith they discovered later on. So it just encompasses a lot more different approaches to it and reactions to it.
So out of all the things that are out there, how do you even pick what it is that you want to have displayed here?
It's a combination of things. We have certain ideas among the curatorial staff of things that would illustrate very well the mission of the museum. We also try to keep in mind that every exhibition serves a slightly different audience, so we try to mix and match, if an exhibition, say, is very Catholic in nature, just by the artists who had created that art or the reasons it was created for, we then try to serve the Orthodox constituency. If we do a lot of ancient art or medieval art, then we try to do more modern. So, we try to serve as wide an audience as possible. What's happened in recent years, which is really nice, as the museum has started having a bit of a stature in the community, and more people have learned that we exist, we get proposals from outside curators too, and so we choose among them as well.
Do you think that in viewing this art in any way helps people with their faith?
Our approach is academic. So we don't intend on people, helping people with their faith, but what I'm learning, and that's a really nice aspect of the museum, what I'm learning is that people do look at their faith and ask questions and Many of them use these exhibitions as a meditative environment. So I think it does appeal on that level as well.
So what's your goal to perhaps the theologian, the scholars, or just the layman or the visitor? What's your goal educationally, aesthetically, to kind of bring to these different groups that might come here?
From the point of view of the general public, they learn something about culture more generally. They learn something about the way religion has shaped our democracy. To a large extent, they learn something about biblical literacy, which I believe should be part of every educated person's overall knowledge. And it's something that our schools are not very good at teaching.
And that was Dr. Ina Heller, Executive Director of the Museum of Biblical Art in Manhattan. So what did you think?
I liked it. It's a very wide variety, obviously, of art we're going to see in just a bit, hint, hint. But, I mean, it's very neat. And one of the things that I liked about what she said was that their intention was not to have someone, examine or strengthen their faith, but it's kind of been an unintended consequence, I guess, of just having that biblical art there.
Right. Well, a lot of it is, they have everything from modern art to, old art, which we're going to see in a minute a little bit more about that. But they do a good job, and it's nice to know that it's there. It's interesting.
Definitely so. And we do have a look inside the museum coming up straight ahead.
Coming up, a picture's worth 1,000 words.
Well, we just met Dr. Ina Heller, the Executive Director of the Museum of Biblical Art, which is right here in New York.
Sure is.
We learned not only what biblical art is, but saw how the creation of masterpieces has changed over the years.
It has, and I wanted to get a look around the museum to see firsthand what it does have to offer. And I wound up getting a tour of a very special exhibit. The Bible, Belgium, and the movable type printing press all come together in this 16th century exhibit. Father Paul Tabor is the museum's director of exhibition.
In Northern Europe in the 16th century, biblical illustrations proliferated. We find these biblical illustrations both illustrating the text of the Bible, and they were also collected as independent volumes of images that illustrated the Bible, but again, did not have the text situated next to the images.
The show focuses on biblical art from the Netherlands and how that art was vying for the hearts and minds of Europeans. Many couldn't read, so often a picture really was worth 1,000 words. Dozens of engravings, woodcuts, and illustrated Bible books reveal tensions between the two camps of the reformers and counter-reformers. Some pieces are neutral, some were meant to unify, others to divide.
We can see that sometimes these images promote a reformer's perspective as opposed to a Catholic perspective.
This engraving of Joshua crossing the River Jordan is contrasted with another of Christ's baptism in the same river.
It was intended to be a way for the faithful, in looking at this image, to understand the story, but also in a larger context, understand God's goodness to the people of Israel to bring them to salvation. It's an image of Christ and the beginning of his ministry that would bring salvation to the world.
The next section on doctrine includes a depiction of Old Testament prophets foretelling the virgin birth.
Here we see 6 prophets and kings in the foreground, all of whom hold cartouches or plaques, which tell the story or their own prophecies of Christ being born of the Virgin Mary, which we see illustrated here in the center of the image. Interestingly enough, the 6 prophets and kings are portrayed here as 6 pillars holding up the church. So in essence, what we are finding is an image that helps us understand the importance of these Old Testament prophets to the present-day church.
Perhaps one of the best-known images is that of the Magi, or 3 wise men bringing their gifts to the baby Jesus.
These images of the wise men prostrating themselves before Christ bringing gifts is supposed to be a lesson that's taught to the faithful. Okay. It's supposed to be a lesson to all of us that we too should bring all of our gifts, whether or not they happen to be our personal talents, our wealth, or whatever it happens to be. We bring them before Christ to put it at his disposal to use for the good of the church and the good of the world that he has come to redeem.
These 90-page devotional books were for personal prayer and meditation, meant to encourage its readers to remake themselves in Christ's image.
It shows the end of the process of the imitation of Christ, where the faithful no longer sees himself or herself, but sees the process of renovation of the soul to have been completed, so that you see yourself as really Christ-like.
The exhibit's final section is devoted to politics. 2 pieces in particular shed light on the debate over imperialism versus localism, Protestant followers of Luther versus Catholic anti-reformists.
Basically, this is Luther's way of talking about his theology of the law and grace. Basically, the law alone, represented by the Old Testament, was something that was insufficient to govern a state. And according to Luther, the only way that you could live according to the law would be to have God's grace at work in your life. Here we see an image of Christ handing an orb, which is really an image for worldly authority, both to Philip II, the King of Spain, as well as to Pope Gregory XIII behind him. It's an image in which the Catholics are basically saying that Christ himself gives authority of government both to the Spanish king as well as to the Pope, and the two of them working in concert are those two forces in life that are able to establish good government throughout the world.
Well, thank you so
Sure.
much, Paul. I really
Excellent.
appreciate it.
It's a pleasure to have you here, Francesca.
Likewise. No,
Thank
it's
you.
great. We look forward to your next exhibition,
Good.
too. And that is the Museum of Biblical Art. And, you know, they change out the exhibitions that are there, so they have another one coming up in a couple of weeks, even some modern art. I think perhaps it may have some Andy Warhol or something. I mean, they do have world-class artists.
Definitely a wide variety there. It's really,
Sure.
it's really a neat thing.
Yeah.
And you know what else is cool? A piece of modern art.
Yes.
I have to show everybody.
Okay.
Is this right here? Let me see. Okay, I have it right here. It's a copy of the New York Post, first of all, yesterday's edition. And you will find on page 59 a wonderful piece of modern art featuring our beautiful faces right here. Yes, it is a Currents ad right there at the bottom of page 50. Full color.
Yeah, I know.
Half-page ad in the New York Post.
That ain't cheap.
That's not cheap. But it's kind of cool. I mean, it's our faces right there in the New York Post.
You know, when Gary, our marketing director, sent these to us, sent us the picture of it the other day, and when I saw it, I said, you know, are you kidding me? And but no, it's great.
It is cool.
Yeah, see, I bought my own copy too. Actually, I bought Matt's copy too.
She did.
We're a team here at Currents.
That's right. She came in with like 3 dozen of them.
And and what it says is, it says, "In good news we trust."
Yes.
Which I love.
I love that. I love that tagline.
And that is not the only piece of art that's out there of us, of our Currents team.
We both found, Francesca and I both had encounters with ads on the back of MTA buses yesterday.
Yep.
Tell the good folks about your encounter.
My little experience. Okay, so I'm driving to the bank. I'm trying to make it there before 6 o'clock when we get out of here because we tape the show a little earlier in the day, right? So what do is all of a sudden I'm at a stoplight, or almost at a stoplight, and there's a bus in front of me, and I look up and I'm like, that's us. That's us on the back of the bus. And so I'm sitting there with my cell phone camera trying to take a picture, almost run the red light. Not so good.
I can just see the headline now. News anchor, cause of death runs into the back of a bus.
No DUI, no anything. Right. Just trying to catch
Trying to take a picture with your cell phone or something.
Goodness gracious.
Oh my goodness. But check it out. Keep your eye out for those MTA buses out there.
Yeah, they're everywhere.
Literally. Well, that's it for this edition of Currents. Coming up tomorrow, we'll take you to a special Mass to kick off the Diocese Pastoral Year.
We'll also bring you an exclusive interview with Brooklyn Auxiliary Bishop Frank Caggiano. We have that and much more tomorrow on Currents.
And remember, in the meantime, you can always catch us online. The address, netny.net/currents. There you can see clips of the show. Just check out our blog. It is called Riding the Wave.
And you can also send us an email. Let us know what you think and share your story ideas as well. We want to hear from you. So write to us at dropusaline@currentsny.net. So for all of us here at Currents, I'm Francesca Maxime.
And I'm Matt McClure. Thank you so much for watching. Have a great night.